3 races, that is all it took for Formula One to admit that something has gone seriously wrong.
On Monday, the 20th of April, the FIA sat down with every team principal, every engine manufacturer, CEO, and Formula One management. The agenda was simple. The 2026 regulations are broken and they need to be fixed before Miami. By the end of that meeting, a package of rule changes had been unanimously agreed upon. Every single stakeholder signed off on it. That almost never happens in Formula One.
So what exactly went wrong and what is changing?
Let's start with the crash that made it impossible to ignore. Japan, final practice. Oliver Bearman is following Franco Colapinto down a straight. Colapinto's car suddenly slows down, not because he braked, not because something broke, but because the car was actively harvesting energy from its own engine. The closing speed between the two cars was enormous. Bearman had no time to react. He went off at nearly 190 miles per hour and hit the barrier hard. That moment crystallised what the drivers had been saying since the very first race in Australia. The 2026 cars are unpredictable in a way that goes beyond the normal challenges of a new regulation cycle.
The issue is not just about performance, it's also about safety.
To understand why, you need to understand what happened to the power unit in 2026. For the first time in Formula One history, the electric motor and the combustion engine are designed to produce equal amounts of power, a 50-50 split. The electric motor is now genuinely as powerful as the engine itself. But that electric power comes from a battery, and that battery runs out fast, much faster than anyone anticipated. When the battery gets low, the teams have 2 options. The first is lift and coast. The driver simply lifts off the throttle to stop using electric power and lets the battery recharge under braking. The second is a technique called superclipping. This is where it gets strange. During superclipping, the driver keeps their foot flat on the throttle, but the electric motor is switched into reverse. Instead of pushing the car forward, it acts as a generator and uses the engine's power to charge the battery. The car is still at full throttle, but it is simultaneously braking itself. The result is a car that visibly decelerates on a straight while the driver has the pedal to the floor. It looks bizarre from the outside. From the inside, it is manageable. But for the car directly behind, it is terrifying.
That is what happened to Bearman, and that is what the FIA had to fix.
The changes they agreed on cover 4 areas: energy management in qualifying, energy deployment during the race, the start procedure, and wet weather conditions. In qualifying, the core problem has been that drivers cannot complete a fast lap without constantly managing their battery. A flying lap in Formula One should be the purest expression of speed. Instead, drivers have been forced to plan their energy recovery across the entire lap, deciding where to superclip and where to lift and coast, all while trying to find the limit of the car. It has turned qualifying into a strategy exercise rather than a driving exercise. The FIA is addressing this by reducing the maximum energy a car can harvest per lap from 8 megajoules down to 7 megajoules. Less harvesting means less need for aggressive superclipping. At the same time, when superclipping does happen, it will now be allowed to pull up to 350 kilowatts instead of the previous 250. The logic is that a more powerful but shorter burst of harvesting is far less disruptive than a longer, weaker one. George Russell, who represents the drivers through the Grand Prix Drivers Association, described the 350 kilowatt change as a no-brainer. The FIA expects these 2 tweaks combined to reduce the total superclipping time per lap to somewhere between 2 and 4 seconds.
For the race, the priority shifts from performance to safety.
The speed differentials between cars in different battery states have been the biggest danger. A car with a full battery deploying maximum electric power can be travelling significantly faster than a car that is superclipping just ahead of it. That gap in speed is where accidents happen. From Miami onwards, the maximum additional power available through the boost function in race conditions will be capped at 150 kilowatts. That limits how aggressively a driver can close on the car ahead. The FIA is also regulating where the MGUK can deploy its full power. In the key acceleration zones, corner exits, and the main overtaking areas, the full 350 kilowatts remains available. Everywhere else on the lap, deployment is capped at 250 kilowatts. The idea is to keep overtaking possible while making the speed differences between cars more predictable and manageable. The start procedure is getting an entirely new safety system. Getting these cars off the line has proven to be genuinely difficult. The new power units are complex, and if a car fails to accelerate properly when the lights go out, it becomes a stationary obstacle in the path of 20 other cars. The FIA has developed what they are calling a low-power start detection system. The moment a driver releases the clutch, the system monitors the car's acceleration. If the car is moving too slowly, the MGUK automatically fires to get it moving. This is not a sporting advantage, it is a minimum threshold to prevent a car from sitting still on the grid. Any car that triggers this system will also have its rear and lateral lights flashing to warn the drivers behind. Because this is completely new technology, it will be trialled in Miami before being formally written into the regulations. The wet weather changes are more straightforward. Drivers have been struggling with the cars in low grip conditions because the electric torque is simply too aggressive. The FIA is reducing the maximum ERS deployment in wet conditions, which will make the cars more controllable. Intermediate tyre blanket temperatures are also being increased following direct feedback from the drivers, giving them better grip immediately after leaving the pit lane. And the rear light systems are being simplified to make visibility clearer in heavy spray.
Now, here's where it gets interesting, because not everybody thinks that these changes are actually going to solve the problem.
Toto Wolff was cautious. He warned publicly that the FIA risks using a bat when the situation calls for a scalpel. His concern is that changing the regulations after just 3 races, before the teams have had a proper chance to develop their cars around the current rules, could create more instability than it resolves. But the most honest assessment came from inside the paddock. Hoagie Nid, the head of car engineering at Haas, explained the fundamental tension at the heart of these changes. Formula One in 2026 is already what he called an energy-starved formula. The cars do not have enough battery capacity to sustain full electric deployment for the entire lap. That was always going to be the case. By reducing how much energy the cars can harvest, the FIA is also reducing how much they can deploy. If the battery runs out earlier, you do not get super clipping, you get something called normal clipping. Normal clipping is when the battery simply empties and the electric motor shuts off. The car loses half its power and the speed drops at the end of the straight. It is less dramatic than super clipping and it is less dangerous, but it is still there. What Nid was pointing out is that the FIA has not solved the underlying problem, they have changed the shape of it. The cars will behave more naturally, the lap times will be slightly slower, and the most dangerous scenarios will be reduced. But Formula One in 2026 is still a formula built around managing an energy deficit, and no mid-season tweak is going to change that fundamental reality. The bigger changes are coming. The FIA has already signalled that a more comprehensive review of the 2026 regulations is underway, with significant revisions expected for 2027. What we are seeing in Miami is a patch, not a solution.
Whether that patch is enough is the question that will be answered over the next few months.
Miami is the first test. It is a sprint weekend, which means the teams have just 1 hour of free practice to understand how these new rules change the behaviour of their cars. The engineers who adapt fastest will have a clear advantage. And the timing could not be more complicated. Miami is not just a regular race weekend, every major team is also bringing a significant upgrade package. Ferrari is bringing a revised floor and the return of their controversial Macarena wing. Mercedes has new aerodynamic components. Red Bull is trying to address the weight problem that has been crippling their car all season. All of that development work was calibrated around the old rules. Now, the teams have to figure out how their upgrades interact with a completely new energy management framework, all within a single practice session. There is also a broader question that nobody in the paddock wants to answer directly. The 2026 regulations were years in the making. They were designed to attract new engine manufacturers, to make Formula One more relevant to the automotive industry, and to create a new generation of cars that push the boundaries of technology. 3 races in, the drivers are calling it broken, the governing body is rewriting the rules mid-season, and the engineers are openly saying that fixing one problem is creating another. That is not a minor setback. Max Verstappen was among the most vocal critics from the very beginning, and the fact that the FIA has now acted so quickly is a direct acknowledgement that the drivers were right. What happens next will define the 2026 season. If the Miami changes work, the conversation shifts back to the racing. If they do not, the pressure to make even more drastic changes will become impossible to ignore.
Is the FIA doing enough, or is this just buying time until a proper fix arrives? Let us know what you think in the comments below.